What is the threshold? How many counts does he need to be found guilty of um, for him to stand impeached?
One.
Just that?
Any single one.
Any single one?
Because the motion could have just been one item. There's no requirement for two items or two charges or three charges or four, just one.
So what happens next now?
So it's a question.
Wait, sorry, before you even go to what next, so will they vote on the other 10?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
They will have to vote on.
They'll have to vote on each one until the end of the order paper, and the requirement is there were 11. They have to go down the list.
Okay, but as it stands now,
that first one is done, and therefore the totality is, of course, they'll have to announce it, but the totality is from where we stand. He's impeached.
So what happens next?
He's legally out of office as we speak now. Constitution.
Okay, all right. So this is.
I think the remaining 10 charges.
It's almost an anticlimax of sorts.
And it's so
just
fast.
in the sense because you wanted to see how the voting takes place over, all the 11 counts.
I think the problem is the electronics. Before, you remember, it used to be a physical vote. Right now, the electronics makes it so fast. But to follow up on an item that Charles had said earlier, which I think we were discussing off camera. What happens next? What happens next is a political process.
Yeah.
How fast that political process goes is how fast those in government want it to go. And those in government can be very efficient when they want to be.
Yeah,
So
and
it's highly possible that we'll have a gazette notice out. It's very highly possible that we'll have a nominee sent to the National Assembly by very early tomorrow morning. And it's highly possible, as Charles has said, under Article 149, that they will be done with that by tomorrow. Now the question then that comes is, for cabinet members, for PSS, for high-level appointments, usually you have a vetting process with public participation, with a committee set up. Are they going to go through that process, yes or no? My view is that if they wish to go that way, it's possible that they do. But this particular section doesn't require that. And Article 149, the language is to vote for the nominee, vote up or down.
Yeah.
Under 152, which is where the cabinet and other high officials come through, the language is approve. Approve presupposes a process of some form of process of vote. Is just like what happened right now. It's a vote. It's not consider and vote. It's just vote. And the perception is this is a very specialized process. Impeachment is really a closed, specialized process. Notice, for example, there are criminal offenses being alleged. Those criminal offenses, under normal circumstances, one needs to go to jail if they are convicted, one needs to be fined if they are convicted, and if that process ends, one cannot be charged again for the same offense.
Okay.
All those things are not the same case here.
I want you to hold that thought for just a moment because I would like us to just update our viewers on this news that is just breaking. If you have just joined our live broadcast, the breaking news that is in is that Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua tonight stands impeached, making history as the first sitting deputy president to be impeached by both houses of parliament. He was facing 11 counts, and they have voted on one. Well, they're voting on the second or the third one by now, but the threshold that is required is that he only needs to be found guilty of one count, and that was the very first count, charge 1, gross violation of the Constitution. And 53 senators voted on the first count that he has been charged with, thereby impeaching the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. What a dramatic day that has been, even as he tonight spends the night in hospital, having suffered chest pains earlier this afternoon. The process proceeding in the Senate, that is the second or upper part of the House, that's how they like to call it, as part of a bicameral process. And so, Jamila, on this day, and this has happened shortly before 11 o'clock.
And I find it interesting that Wakili has just said that as it is, it's only one count is enough to get him out. They just voted on the second ground. And it was really interesting that only 28 were for and 39 were not. So if this had been the first ground that they had voted on, he would still be the sitting deputy president. But it's interesting how the senators are voting on the second one. It was about also gross violation of the constitution, but for this one they voted with him. But as you said, Yvonne, and as Wakili said, that this is it's over. And you talk about the political... Yes.
Just to cut it short, because it's important to just explain that the first ground that the Senate has impeached or has voted to remove the deputy president from office by impeachment is on the touching on the sentiments that the utterances that he made about serikali shares.
Yeah.
So that is which that they're supporting with 53 votes. The next one, the second one that has been defeated is the ground on insubordination of the president, or undermining the president, where you have some 28 senators voting to agree with the ground, but another 39 disagreeing with it. This is the third one, which is on the gross violation and the fourth schedule of the constitution. This is on devolution, the question of Nairobi County and Governor Sakaja. Already you can see that a majority, which is 45, are voting not to substantiate the ground, meaning he's not being impeached on this ground. So far, it's just the first ground.
Yeah. So there we go. It would then be Linus, the infamous statements around shareholding and likening the Republic of Kenya to a company that would prove to be...
It was certainly the most likely charge out of all the 11 that would directly have a bearing on the future of the political career of Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. And it's one that members of Parliament, starting with the National Assembly, found it quite very easy to articulate. And even in the Senate, this is the low-hanging fruit, if I can call it that way, because this is one of the areas that the Deputy President, now former Deputy President, going by the result of the first charge, because as it goes, and the constitutional experts are in the room, Article 145, sub-article 7 actually presumes immediately that the Deputy President ceases to hold office as soon as he is impeached, and that's the result of this vote. And the issue of the utterances around shareholding, you realize that that's where a lot of the strength of the motion mover was coming from, playing the clips that were collected, a majority of them from the media circles. And I think there is something else there.
Yeah, the independence of judges. That's
another
ground
Yes,
4.
that is ground 4.
Yeah, the independence of judges.
Which was about independence of the judges. Justice Esther Maina. Again, 51 senators have voted to impeach, meaning this is a ground that has been substantiated in the eyes and in the minds of the senators. So that's the second ground of impeachment.
And that'll be quite an area of debate because if you look at the clip that was used in illustrating the attacks on the judge, if you play further down, just after where the Senate stopped reviewing the footage, you'll realize that more leaders actually were not very kind to the judiciary. So there is a bit of convenience also that will go into this political voting. On the clip that was used, the former deputy president was not the only speaker who expressed himself, especially in terms of attacking the judiciary. But again, this is parting times. I think he's paid the price. There are a few more people in the clip that will not pay the price, but he has paid the ultimate price.
And one of them was saying, a very important person in this country was saying that the time for judges hiding behind the independence of the judiciary to sabotage government programs needed to end. That clip was not played in the Senate.
It wasn't played in full. Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Which count is this?
This is ground 5.
And the count...
The oath of office and allegiance.
And let's see where that goes. If it goes
Yeah, they're voting to impeach
beyond
on that one.
Just one more is needed. There we go.
Yeah. So it also succeeds.
Yeah.
46 voting in support. Oh, well, now 47. I'm still counting because the total number of senators is 67. It talks about obeying the Constitution and preserving it. 49 voting to impeach, 16 disagreeing with the ground, and 2 abstaining. Again, the third count has been sustained.
Wakili was talking about how political this process is. We'll not be surprised if we see a Gazette notice out tonight, and then
There you go.
the privileges that the former deputy president had in terms of security and vehicles and all that. Could that be withdrawn?
It moves very fast, and those come with the office.
Yeah.
And if I was just to read the article that the gentleman mentioned, the Kai, it says if at least 2/3 of the members of the Senate vote to uphold any impeachment charge, the president or the deputy president ceases to hold office. It's just that fast.
Okay, Charles.
So the office, if you cease to hold office, the privileges of the office.
Yeah.
Now there was some discussion about can I hold, some background. The key is if you held office for 2.5 years,
Yes.
even if you are impeached, you still retain. It's assumed that you have been a former deputy president. If it is for less than 2.5 years, that does not sustain. On the other hand, if you serve, now whoever comes in, if they serve for more than 2.5 years, that's considered one term.
So they will get perks at the end of.
They'll first of all get perks at one, and 2, they can only run for a second term. In other words, the 2.5 plus is considered a full term.
All right, just pause for a moment, because this is the 6th ground, and once again, the senators have voted to find him guilty on count
ground number
number 6.
Serious reason to believe that His Excellency the Deputy President has committed crimes under various sections of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. Some of the illustration of that was also the question of shares.
Yeah. That would seem to
48.
be... Yes.
48 out of 67. That is 71.6. Of course, they needed 45.
Yeah.
So how many grounds do you have so far?
Out of the 6, we have 4.
4 so far.
Voting against.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's see. Yes. So I apologize for that. That I think it was a signal that was coming out of Parliament. The screen that is showing the vote tally, and so Abdikadir was saying about the perks and whoever would take over from office now until the next election would be deemed to have served a full
If they
term.
stay for 2.5 years.
If they that's an important rider.
That sounds
Thank
like
you.
a full term.
That's a very important rider. So Charles, even as we see how the vote goes for ground 7, so in practical terms, we've talked about the perks and everything. What happens to Rigathi Gachagua?
The situation is not completely clear because there have been different outcomes for different governors who have faced something similar. Right now we have a governor who's still in office despite having been removed by the Senate earlier than Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua through orders, conservatory orders. This is ground number 7.
Yeah.
This one has failed.
Yeah.
This is the one on corruption, money laundering, and issues of the assets he's been acquiring, that the deputy president has been acquiring. So this particular ground has failed. So far we have 4 counts that have succeeded and 3 counts have failed. And as we are speaking about what happens next, there are those who are able to preserve status quo. However, the deputy president has previously tried in the court. In fact, there were so many petitions that were filed, several of them were consolidated.
26.
Yes, exactly. And by the time the 3-judge bench was dealing with the question of conservatory orders, there was already a decision of a single judge on the same matter. And there is a legal term that we call res judicata, something that has already been decided. You cannot now go back to court and try to get a different position unless you go on appeal to the higher court. So the deputy president's team will try to have a new application to preserve status quo. They'll say the situation has changed, but they'll be facing that challenge of convening a bench, the same three-judge bench, quickly enough to deal with the matter. So one possibility is that he goes the way of Governor Kawira Mwangaza, or even as happened formerly with the governor of Embu in his first term, Martin Wambora, and manages to pause the outcome of the Senate process of impeachment. The second option is that he fails to do so, and he remains out of office, like what happened to Governor Mike Sonko. And if you are out of office, then it means that your political career suffers a big hit. We'll discuss that. We are now in ground number 8. This one also seems to have failed. This one is about false, malicious, divisive, and insightful remarks contrary to the Penal Code and Leadership and Integrity Act. This.
But how do they split this from the first judge?
I don't think.
Let me explain.
Yes.
The first about 4 counts were relating to violation of the Constitution, because the Constitution has 3 basic grounds upon which you can impeach a deputy president. The next set of grounds, the ones we are looking at now, these counts have to do with suspicion that is committed a crime under local or international law. So this one, the threshold is a bit higher, I think, than the one for violation of the Constitution, even though the courts have said the standard of proof is what in legal terms we say above the civil standard, is more than balance of probabilities, but below the criminal standard, which is beyond reasonable doubt. So you need to prove the evidence to a certain standard that is in the middle between civil cases and criminal cases. So it's possible to find someone has not met the test for one of the grounds and has met for another, even though the grounds seem, or the counts seem connected, which is what has happened here, that you engage in action that was contrary to the National Cohesion and Integration Act, but yet on the question of divisive remarks under the Penal Code, you've not reached that higher standard.
Let me ask.
Maybe just to add, it also shows the coloring of the entity doing the judgment. Parliament understands the first charge. It's very clear. It's a very political charge. Parliament is not very comfortable with anti-money laundering or theft for obvious reasons.
It cuts too close.
So you need to understand that this is the court.
So glass houses, huh?
Absolutely.
I wanted to, yes.
Just before you carry on, I've noticed something and I'm wondering if it's procedural. Ground number 7, at some point, 14 had voted yes, and 52 had voted no. Then it changed from 14 to 13, and from 52 to 53. So someone appears to have changed their vote.
Can you change
from
the
yes
vote?
to no?
How does it work?
I believe you can. These are parliamentary processes. Within that time of voting, I don't know.
So before the window closes, you can.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, there's a time frame.
Yeah.
All
If
right.
you put the card in the wrong slot, you can put
have
it in
time
the
to-
correct slot.
Okay. All right. There was something I wanted to ask because, you know, when they were last in court, they had sought leave to perhaps amend their petition for something tomorrow, Charles? Or
So can I was going to say something about the court process.
Yes. Please do, because you've said some interesting things on X.
So first of all, the procedure under the statute, which is where the governors were being processed, and the procedure under the Constitution, one is senior to the other, even though it's actual carbon copy. The leeway the courts have is different. This is the Constitution, number one. Number two, the decision in the Wambora case at the Supreme Court has been very good in terms of setting the law. In my opinion, the courts have very little leeway to interfere with or interface with this process. So, for example, we have just had criminal cases, criminal charges. What you would expect if somebody was found guilty of a criminal offense, that there would be criminal sanctions. That is not the case. Nobody's going to jail. Nobody's going to be fined. They'll lose their job. So this process is a specialized, very watertight process, very seriously timelined. And I think the courts involving themselves so deeply in this process was a misdirection. It was actually not constitutional, in my opinion. Because look at it. Wambora started in 2014, and he was impeached by the county assembly and got a stay. By the time it went through the processes to the Court of Appeal in 2017, 4 years later, the Supreme Court said he was rightly impeached and should not have been in office. That surely was not the intention of the Constitution, especially when you will be dealing with a president, not the deputy president. What would be the situation when you have a president impeached by both houses of parliament, in office by virtue of the decision of one judge in the High Court, anywhere in the country, for the next 3 years, for example, while the Senate and the National Assembly have it will be political gridlock and a very, very dangerous situation. That's why impeachment is a very short process. It's really a short, I like the term used by my friend Harvey, it's a constitutional coup, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you don't take very many years of legalese to go through those things. You need to move, just like when there's an election petition at the president's level, it is very short, it's within 30 days, and the president asked, don't take office until we are done with your case. It's for good reasons.
I think I want to push back a bit, Council, on that argument, because for Kenya, I think this constitution has been a bit like moving straight from walking on foot to driving a Ferrari.
Okay.
And when you look at the impeachment clause, it's so sophisticated. I don't think it's written for our environment. It presumes that we actually impeach because of impeachable reasons. When you see impeachment and how we use impeachment in this country, and you just want to look at how it's done in the counties, it's used more as a political tool. It's one of the tools that are available for you to fight your opponents. It could be something as simple like, oh, we don't like you. Because
Sorry, Lynn, just hold that thought. Ground number 9, they voted to impeach him. 46 votes versus 20. That's ground number 9.
This is the speech, 26th of June 2024.
When he spoke in Mombasa.
Mombasa about the National Intelligence Service.
Right.
The senators agree that that is an impeachable ground, 46 voting in support, 20 disagreeing, 1 abstaining.
Okay, sorry.
Just to clarify, we are now in the counts that are dealing with gross misconduct. We have the first 5 counts had to do with breach of the Constitution, then the next 3 grounds or counts had to do with violation, belief that you have committed a crime under local international law. That is ground number 6 to 8. Then ground number 9 to 11 are related to gross misconduct. So this was the first of the gross misconduct counts that has been voted in support of the impeachment resolution.
Yeah, that's an important one on gross misconduct. Linus,
Yes,
go back to your point. You were...
Yes, I was just illustrating on what we would consider misuse of impeachment. And I just want us to look at the illustration that is with us now, which is the impeachment of former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua. Count 1, which was about his pronouncements, shareholding. If the political community actually felt he was wrong, how come nobody ever contradicted him in public, especially in the first year of office? We will not forget that Rigathi Gachagua was the warrior of the Kenya Kwanza campaigns, the man who displayed a very low capacity for embarrassment, and he went for his opponents, in a very shameless way. Whether it's former President Uhuru Kenyatta or Raila Odinga, there was no holding back when it came to what Rigathi Gachagua could say. But nobody told him, hey, shareholding is bad language, it's impeachable. But further down the line, relations between him and the boss soured. And there was this, well, I believe, looking around for whatever charges that can be found to impeach him, including talk of money laundering. And I'm beginning to think, did someone regret why the 200 billion case was dropped? Because it would have come in handy.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, count 10.
There's some
Yeah, we
development.
just had ground 10.
Yeah.
We didn't get to 45.
Right, and this is the one about insubordination of the president. Yes, 22, no, 44. They don't. Majority of senators don't believe it's a ground, and that's tallies with what they found under the undermining of the president and the cabinet earlier on in ground 2, where 28 were voting yes,
Yeah.
and
30.
what is the other number? 39 were voting no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Linus, I think on the issue you had mentioned, look, if many state officers were put to this test, they would fail. Many in parliament or in the cabinet or elsewhere, many people would fail this test. Number one. Number two, clearly there are political knives at work.
Yes.
In the process. So that, I think, and thirdly, the public in Kenya has a very low trust threshold for our politicians. So all that is absolutely correct. Having said that, it is the public that has voted for members of our parliament. They actually are currently members of parliament. So the functions they undertake as members of parliament are constitutional and legitimate functions. And finally, this actually is a political device. So for example, Charles is a very good lawyer. If he was tomorrow, without any process in parliament here, on a normal sunny day, file a case in the High Court to say, I'm going to file a case for impeachment. The High Court, most lawyers will tell you, has unlimited jurisdiction. So if Charles was to wake up one morning and decide without any process going on in parliament and go and say, I'm going to file an impeachment case, he will be laughed out of court. He'll be told, impeachment, we don't deal with impeachment, go to the parliament. That's